Welcome to my video for Enraged Blazing Emissary, the Fire Advent side story. This is the Epic Hell level mode. This is not new or mid-game player content. It's not even really late-game player content. This is very end-game content. It is not easy to do, and if you get frustrated with it, that's okay. Just run the normal hell and you'll be able to clear out the shop. This is my favorite team. We're not going to really respect any mechanics with this team. We're just going to burst through it. Champion Zerato is great on the first team because he can't be stunned and he counters and does decent damage. ML Ken can just about solo it all by himself with his counters, and Spirit Eye Celine's counters are really nice too. On stage 2, we're going to use Sinful Angelica to attack buff everybody, and then we're going to just burst through it with a very, very high damage Luna, and follow it up with a big single target nuke from a rage set Shuri. We put effectiveness on Luna, so hopefully we stick a defense buff so that that rage set matters. Team 3 is the most common way people are beating Epic Hell. We'll use Amelia for her cleanses and CR pushes. We'll use Furious to lay down all the debuffs we need, including an all-important blind debuff. And we'll use Sigrid, a standard Wyvern 13 one-shot Sigrid to finish the fight off. Remember to take your side story pet to get the bonus to side story currency. It does count in this. Now this fight does have mechanics, and this team ignores them. That speed buff that's on the Magnar's bar, you want to get debuffs on the turtle and then hit the turtle 4 times to remove that. The counterattack buff on the next phase, you want to have 2 buffs on your units and then hit anybody 5 times to remove that. Otherwise those buffs persist and make the final phase very difficult. I found that if you've got the gear, this is the easier way to do it. I will go over how to do this fight respecting the mechanics in fight number 2 of this video. So if you want or need to, you can see how to play this game the way Smilegate wants you to play it. But I'll be honest with you, it was more difficult doing it that way than doing it this way. So on this first phase, you can just run it full auto. Just make sure you turn auto off before you get to the next phase. But as you can see, Spirit Eye Celine does a little bit of damage, ML Ken does a lot of damage, and Champion Zerato is just mostly there to keep the, throw on some extra chip damage and to keep the skill null off of the Magnar. For Team 1, feel free to mix and match with any of the teams from my video. Just if you're doing the mechanics one, make sure you respect the mechanics. And we are now on to Phase 2. Now Phase 2, we're just going to try to burst it down as quickly as possible. If I use her S3 here, it'll get stripped. The attack buff, I mean, will get stripped. So I'm going to save it because I'm pretty sure she will lap. Speed tuning is kind of important. You want to make sure your Sinful is fast enough that she laps. That way everybody gets the benefit of this attack buff. You run it too early, the enemy strips the attack buff off and you won't be able to clear this phase. Now I'm hoping I'll stick the defense break. It'll make Watcher Shuri's rage set work a little bit better, but if I don't stick it, I'm pretty sure this will still clear. I did stick it. There's no need to burn because this will push phase. If you want to be a little more safe about this, don't go rage set on Shuri, just put a really good attack or destruction set on him, and then you don't have to worry about Luna sticking the defense break. Phase 3, the Magnar bleeds burns everybody, so we cleanse that with Amelia. You need Furious to be fast enough that he goes before the Magnar. Otherwise the Magnar could blind him, and it'll make it difficult for these buffs to stick, debuffs to stick. We got all 3 of them, which helps because now the Magnar's blind, and blind into ice, hopefully it'll make him miss a little more often. We push Sigrid up. Sigrid can burn her S2. Hopefully we get some bleeds. We got one bleed. Into all of those debuffs. There we got a second bleed. So into all of those debuffs, this will easily one-shot. You want to have the target from Song of Stars and ideally the blind to give you enough debuff stacks that Sigrid hits harder. And that's how I cleared stage 1. I would have used this team 4 more times if I wasn't making this video, but I figure we'll give you some other options. So speaking of options, here is team number 2. In team number 2, we will respect the mechanics and play the game the way Smilegate wants us to. We'll remove the debuffs on each stage, and to do this, you need to go a little slower. So I'm taking Montmorency to keep us healthy and alive in stage 1. I'm taking Rem just as a solid DPS. To be honest, Martial Artist Ken would be better. And I'm going to use Seaside Bologna as my principal debuffer. You notice I put some effectiveness on her. That way she can stick debuffs so we can clear the phase 1 buff off of Magnar. Phase 2, I'm going to run DN. You need to have 2 or more buffs on your units for the condition on phase 2. So DN's perfect for that. Luna is my nuke unit so that when I'm ready to clear phase, I can do it rather quickly. And I'm taking Ran, who I think is critical for this fight. I'm not sure you can easily do it without Ran. You need a stripper, and Ran has got an AoE strip that is guaranteed if you burn it, and also gives you defense breaks and buffs. Phase 3, I'm going to run Kitty Clarissa. She will help push Strays because of his passive on dual attacks. And I'll run Camilla, who will also help push Strays because of passive on dual attacks. Those Strays doesn't need a defense break. Her defense break will act as a debuff, which will make Rage Set hit even harder. Taking my best Banshee killing Strays, but put him on Daydream Joker. He'll help nuke down the last phase. And once again, always bring a side story pet, so you get the bonus to side story currency. So, in this fight, to get rid of the buffs at the top, we get rid of the speed buff in phase 1 and the counter buff in phase 2. The speed buff is removed when you hit the turtle 4 or more times while it has a debuff. Now, nobody's hurt, and Momo has a debuff on her S1 sleep, and that counts. If you S1 and sleep, it'll count, and I got 15%ed, so that did not count. But as long as we stick a debuff, at some point in time we can start doing single target attacks. I got a defense break there off of Seaside Bologna's counter, and hey, I even got a heal block. So none of these hits count towards my total because they're not single target hits. I could do a single target hit here, but I need Momo to make sure nobody dies. So we'll heal up. And this will be our first hit into the condition. So I need 3 more single target hits into that turtle, and we will clear that speed buff off. Resist the urge to use Momo to make your hits. You got plenty of time to do this. Just make sure she keeps everyone healthy. She's got no heals, so that will be our second hit. And this will be our... Oh, wait, there was no debuff, so that didn't count. So we're only up to 2 hits so far.
It's too late to back out now.
Good, we got the defense break back up. That stun RNG is a real pain.
Even if it's just a little. I really want to help. I'll help you. Here I go. I'll show you what I've got.
Okay, so that is 3 hits, and we need 1 more hit into the turtle. This will not count because it's not single target.
I won't go easy on you. I'll keep going. It's going to be okay.
Oh, it's a counter, but that will count because it's single target. So that was our 4th hit, and you'll notice the speed buff is gone. And now we can just burst down the Magnar. This would be a lot easier with Martial Artist Ken in place of Rem. There's several teams that you can use for stage 1. As long as you have a good debuffer to make sure the turtle wears a debuff and enough sustain to survive it, you can use just about any combination of units you like. Stage 1 is the only easy thing about the Advent side story.
Is it my turn? It must have been painful.
Now, the longer the fight goes on, the harder the Magnar hits. So you don't want to spend forever here. This is about as long as you want it to go, or you're going to have trouble completing the later phases.
Here I go.
It's actually a little bit easier if, at this point in the game, Montmorency just takes a dirt nap, because if Momo dies, that'll activate Demon Mode on Rem, and Rem will be able to double tap and clear the phase even faster.
Easy on you. I'll keep going. It's hard, but I won't give up. Is it my turn? It must have been painful. It's too late to back out now.
And this should push phase. Okay, so phase 2. In phase 2 we want to remove that counterattack buff. And that is done by hitting any of the enemy units 5 times while you're wearing 2 or more buffs. They can be counters, they can be AoEs, it doesn't matter. As long as you have 2 or more buffs and you hit the enemy, you will remove the counter buff. So I'm going to save all of Rand's skill, just do an S1, that's our first hit. I'm going to save the heal, so I'll just have DN S1, that'll be my second hit. Now these guys can strip like that, so Luna no longer has 2 buffs, so I'll use Rand's S2 skill at this point, and that will put buffs back on her. Now save the S3. You see how there's a buff on one of those tops? When both of the tops get a buff like that, the Magnar gets a little fireball icon below his health bar, and that's a buff called King's Vigor. When he has this buff, he gets extra crit and speed, and he ignores your buffs, so he ignores anti-crit. I mean, Luna's already taken some nasty damage, so we need to make sure she stays alive. Now, why I like Rand is if you soul burn his S3, you can remove the buffs, and once you remove the buffs from either of the tops, especially both of them, King's Vigor goes away, and Rand has a defense break in it as well. So we've stripped that King's Vigor away by removing the buffs, and the Magnar's hit was pretty weak. Also, the hit from Rand and the hit from DN were the last ones we needed to remove the counterattack buff, so we're good to push phase. I'm going to go ahead and hit one of the tops here so I don't push the Magnar up, because I'm pretty sure if I soul burn Luna's S3, I'll push phase and do a defense break. There we go. Now we're into phase 3, and all of the buffs are gone, so we don't have to worry about being countered or lapped. In this phase, I just used a Strays one-shot. You can use the Cigarette one, or any variety of one-shot you can think of. You can even run Sustain with some healers and a Knight and a DPS unit, because you don't have to worry about counters, so it makes it a lot easier. Kitty's dual attack activates Strays' passive to CR push him up. I can burn for the defense break. I don't need the defense break, I need a debuff, so the debuff will activate Strays' rage set, which will let this one-shot the boss. You don't have to do a one-shot at this point in the game, I just chose to. You can run Knight, Healer, and DPS and just tank it through just fine, because there's no counter or speed buffs. You should be able to complete it nicely. It's slow. If you can do the ignore mechanics one-shots, I recommend it. Now for this third video, we're going to go right back to ignoring the mechanics and just bursting through it, but I'm going to do it with different teams again. just to give you more options. Lulika is here just to hold a book. It could literally be any mage. She's not going to do anything other than hold a book and die. Shu and Ed together can just about solo this first phase as long as you have lifesteal on Ed. If you don't have lifesteal on Ed, use ML Ken, use Champion Zerato, use Spirit Iceline, use somebody who can survive. Stage 2, Camilla is going to be my defense breaker. Sinful Angelica is going to be my attack buffer and cleanser. That part is important. And Sirmia is going to be my nuke. And I forgot to put an artifact on Sirmia. Should run her on Daydream Joker, but I left the artifact off her in the stats section just to show you that your Sirmia doesn't need to be as strong as mine. The thing important about Stage 2 is speed tuning. You gotta have it speed tuned perfectly. Stage 3 also needs to be speed tuned perfectly. You want to do a very strong rage set Sigrid. You need to do a relatively slow Amelia. Amelia has to go after Karen. My Karen's only level 50, she still works fine. Make sure she has the effectiveness, make sure she's on the EE that gives bleeds, and ideally give her the Torn Sleeve artifact for even more bleeds. The reason is we want to stack debuffs to make Sigrid's S3 hit harder to ensure we get a nuke. Stage 1, much like the other Ignore Mechanics stage, can be done completely on full auto. If you do it on manual, it might be a little bit cleaner, and it's very important to make sure you turn off auto before you enter Stage 2, because you will not be fast enough to turn off auto before Sinful Angelica wastes her S3, and that will brick your run. Doing this stage faster would be ideal. I think if you take units like ML Ken, or even Aiden, Spirit Iceline, Champ Zerato, whatever you've got that will help you clear this stage as quickly as possible. It'll make your life on later stages easier. A big part of the success in this is how often Shu activates her Foosh skill. As you can see, that does a chunk of damage. You could also run Shu on Daydream Joker. She'll hit a lot harder. I just didn't bother to change mine. To be honest with you, I'm surprised that Lulika is still standing. Oh, well, there she goes. And we have pushed into Phase 2. Do not use your S3. You want to save your S3 to cleanse, and if you speed tuned right, your Singelica should be twice as fast as Sirmia, so she will cut. You see that burn on Sirmia? See that extra hit on Sirmia? If Sirmia takes a turn, that burn's going to kill her. We'll establish the defense break with a soul burn to make sure it's 100%. And this is why we saved the S3. Sirmia would die if we didn't have it, but since we have it, we can use her S3. That will cleanse the burn away and give her a speed buff to make sure she doesn't get cut. And now she can take her turn without dying. She uses her S2, and to be honest with you, if I had an artifact, I could probably not even burn here, but no artifact with a burn, more than enough damage to push us into Phase 3. Phase 3, you need to make sure your Karen is tanky enough to take these burns. You use the S2, Torn Sleeve gave us a bleed, and she was tanky enough to tank the burns. S3, you're hoping that her EE puts a bleed and that Torn Sleeve activates again for a maximum of 3 bleeds. We only got 2, so Torn Sleeve didn't activate, but that's still plenty of bleeds. I'm going to Soul Burn just to give a little bit of extra health to Sigrid so she can survive the counterattack. Use her S2. She got some bleeds off of her S2. So we've got 4 bleeds, and that is more than enough into defense break for this to one-shot and then some. You can see we really overkilled the damage. So your Sigrid could be a lot weaker if you can stack that many bleeds, or you can make your Sigrid just as strong as mine and not worry about stacking all the bleeds. Well, there you go. 3 different teams for Advent Epic Hell. I hope this helps you complete this mission. If you can't complete Epic Hell, don't worry about it, guys. You can clear out the entire shop except for like 1 or 2 of the mod gems that you probably don't even care about. I mean, who needs revenge set mod gems? So just do standard hell, or if you can't do standard hell, just do the normal version of this fight. It's a little bit slower in earning currency, but you've got 2 weeks and you can definitely clear it out. One final reminder, the last weekend of the month is always guaranteed to be a free unequip event, so if you're struggling with this, wait until next Friday and you can re-gear for free. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments section, and have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.